the e-commerce space in grocery and how General Mills can work with our retail partners to make it better. And then since joining General Mills full-time, I've been on the data science team, largely working in demand planning or demand forecasting, as well as working a little bit with financial forecasting, but mostly forecasting work. And besides that, I'm also in grad school right now, pursuing a master's in computer science.
Hi, everybody. This is Kim Ky. I am currently with the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis in the Community Development Department. My work involves doing data analysis work to support different projects within the department, as well as leading my own data work. And when I'm not working at the bank, I've actually only been at the bank for 3 months. But and before joining the bank, I was at United Healthcare and Metro Transit. And then before that, I was an analyst at an economic consulting firm. I graduated from Macalester in 2016 with a double major in economics and applied math and a teeny minor in computer science. And right now, along with my full-time job, I'm going to the University of Minnesota for a master's in statistics. And when I'm not working or not in school, I lead the, with Fiona Lodge, we lead the Women in Machine Learning and Data Science meetup group. I volunteer with MinneAnalytics to help organize a few of their conferences, including this one, MinneAnalytics Mondays. And yeah, so that's me. I'm excited to talk with everybody today. Thank you.
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Jake Mason. I'm a senior data scientist at Carrot Health, a startup here based in Northeast Minneapolis. We provide a software as a service product for smaller regional health plans to manage and grow their membership in terms of health, health plan quality, as well as just the number of members they manage as well. Formerly at Optum and United Health, started at Carrot earlier this year. In 2016, I graduated from the University of St. Thomas here in St. Paul with an economics and statistics combination of degrees, I guess. One of those was a minor. In the last 5 years, I've been involved in a variety of groups, MinneAnalytics being one, Star 82 as well, a nonprofit. We used to do pro bono consulting work related to various analytics projects. Yeah, that's pretty much me.
Great, thank you so much for that introduction, everyone. So I want to kind of start, I know we have a lot of students on the line as well as faculty. And so I want to start with kind of a basic question of what data science means to you and what you see as some alternative career paths to get into data science.
Yeah, so I can take that one. I think what data science, I was just kind of mulling this over about half an hour ago, and I think what it means to me is, it's all based, science is in the name, right? So it's all based around using the scientific method in order to improve business processes, basically, as it relates to most of the jobs people have here. So I think it's inherently interdisciplinary. You actually see a lot of new, at least at the bachelor level, degree programs for data science mandate that you have a kind of a core statistics and computer science, mathematics concentration, but then you also, like the one at the University of St. Thomas, you specialize in biology or economics, something like that. So I think it's inherently multidisciplinary. You've got to have skills in several different areas. I think one of the greatest summaries of what what a data scientist looks like is it's a programmer who's better than most programmers at statistics, or it's the opposite of that, right? It's the statistician who's a little bit better programmer than the rest of the statisticians. But I think at its core, it's a kind of a relentless drive to understand why things are the way they are and why certain data points predict others, and really not giving up on that goal.
I love that. I oftentimes say to my students that it's really not as much what you learn as the drive to learn. So this idea of curiosity and problem solving. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I second everything that Jake said. And also, you know, for me, when I think about data science, a lot of times people have this idea that modeling is modeling is data science. And if you don't do modeling, then it's not data science. But for me, if you derive insights from a set of data, what kind of, regardless of what method it is, as long as it's sound, it is data science. And then data science is not just science. There's some art to it. So you have to be creative a lot of times, not to a point where you do p-hacking and other things, but you have to be creative in your way into like deriving insights from the data. And so for me, data science is working with data, not including doing modeling or predictive modeling, but that's not the only thing.
Yeah, and if I can jump in there too, I think we've all kind of touched on that it's the combination of so many different things coming together. You know, there's the technical pieces of programming and, you know, like data engineering and data cleaning. But then there's also the whole kind of business analyst side of being able to derive those insights and explain those insights to your business partners. So I think it's kind of a culmination of a lot of different areas of expertise or practice coming together. And I liked the point about how it's, you know, programmers who might have more stats ability than others, or someone who's a statistician who might have more programming ability. It's kind of that in between or all in one compared to some of those other fields.
Great points, and we'll come back to communication and teamwork a little bit later on in the session, but I want to kind of approach a couple of questions related to what happened in college and what students can do to set themselves up for a career in data science. So the next series of questions are going to have to do with this idea of what you learned in college. So I'm curious what you guys found most or least useful, or if there was something that you wish you had learned or invested time in when you were in college. So how can students utilize their time a little bit better?
Yeah, I can take on that question. So for me, I found a lot of my statistics and computer science classes quite useful going into the workforce. However, as I look back, a lot of those concepts weren't very useful if I didn't have practical experience with it. Not necessarily in like a workplace, like an internship, but even like in class. Like most of the time I learned most from my class and actually could apply that to interviews or, you know, make myself stand out is to have those independent projects that apply all of those methodology that I learned in class and then use that as an example in my interviews to get that first internship or that first job out of college. And I highly, highly recommend students starting early in terms of, you know, not early as in like freshman year, but probably sophomore year, junior year, start looking into internships that will be able to help you get through the door. Less difficult. It's still not easy, but it's definitely makes it less difficult to get that first job if you have some internship experience. And that was my experience. Because of my internship at Metro Transit, I was able to, you know, get the job that I wanted.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing of kind of using that project work or kind of independent study experiences. And something that I regret not doing more in undergrad was like seeking out those opportunities to learn not only in class, but also from my peers or do things independently. Because I find that when I apply what I'm learning in school to an actual problem is when I retain it and learn the most. And I was very much, you know, I took a software engineering class and we were in a group with like 6 students And I took my one piece of the project and did it. And I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, there you go, team. Instead of really investing into like the whole project and spending the time to understand all of the pieces of it, I think I would have learned a lot more if I kind of took that next step or the more independent work. It's a pain sometimes because you have all your classwork, but I think I would have found that a lot more beneficial if I applied myself a little bit more there.
Yeah, I think Kim and Claire both hit the nail on the head. For me, it's taking that that drive to, you know, like I mentioned in my last answer, right? It's all about like an endless curiosity. So one thing I did quite a bit of, it's not something I wish I had learned. It's something that I think it'd be nice for other students to know is, you know, you have this curiosity. If you want to get into data science, you probably have a foundational interest in statistics and applying, you know, quantitative approaches to whatever domain. So something I did was to take those approaches, and yeah, you're going to do, you know, if you're a statistics major, you're going to have, you know, 5 term projects over your college career in which you apply statistics in a very rigid way. But I would actually challenge you to take those same approaches and apply them irrespective of domain. Like if you have a couple examples I could give you is like an English class. I took a lot of English courses, and you know, I got to a certain point where I was like, well, you know, I obviously got to do this term paper and it's got to relate in some way to English, but also I'm super interested in statistics and programming. So how can I, you know, merge like kind of the bridge the gap there? And your professors will very likely, if you express that interest and say, hey, you know, I know this is the way most students are doing things, but I want to do it this way. And I think, you know, here's reasons X, Y, and Z. That's something you'll have to do a lot, is provide evidence for why. That's basically what data science is. You know, you might find that they'll be very receptive to doing things in somewhat of an unorthodox way, applying, you know, statistics to English or theater. And one other thing on that is take like a wide variety of classes. I wish I had taken like theater or something, just to get on stage and just do something out there. You know, you're going to have so many engineering and hard sciences classes. It's fun to just kind of get a different perspective.
I totally agree. And I think that's where real creativity happens too, when you're in that interdisciplinary kind of environment. And although I'm not technically a panelist, I'm going to throw a couple of things into the ring. As you guys were speaking, it really just made me think about my PhD experience and the power of saying yes and not putting things off. Don't wait, just go for it, go big and do it. Because once you have full-time jobs, and we have 2 of our panelists who are working full-time and working on a master's degree, it's really hard to go back to that list and do things that you put off in college. So on that note, I did mention that 2 of our panelists, both Claire and Kim, are in a master's program. So I wonder if you guys would share a little bit about why you decided to pursue a master's degree, and if you think it's necessary to get into data science to differentiate yourself or set yourself apart from the competition.
Yeah, I can go first. So I started my master's program obviously after I started working full time and started working in data science. And I actually, when I graduated with my undergrad degree, I wasn't like dead set on being a data scientist. And it kind of half fell into my lap and half was something that I, you know, advocated for myself for at General Mills. But once I started really getting into data science and working with my team and all the different problems we were solving, I realized how much more there is to learn beyond what I was specifically working on, because I've learned a lot on the job about, you know, modeling and different, you know, statistical methods and things like that. But I wanted that broader knowledge beyond what I was specifically working on. So that's why I chose to get my master's degree. I don't think it's necessary to have a career in data science to have a master's degree. For me, I learn really well in the classroom. So that was another reason why I chose to do it, because I prefer that structured learning versus 100% on my own, because there's so many resources. If you want to do it on your own, you can. But yeah, so those are kind of the two main reasons why I chose to do it: the classroom learning, and also to get that broader knowledge faster. So I don't have to wait for when I have certain projects to learn certain things.
Yeah, I think my story is pretty similar to Claire. I have been in data science since for over 3 years now, and I only started my master program last fall. And it was, so to answer your question, is it necessary? I agree with Claire. No, you don't need a master degree to get into data science. All three of us here, Jay, Claire, and I, are examples of that. Like, none of us has a master degree, and we were able to join the workforce and actually do, the actual work, and not just getting people coffee. So anyways, and for me, the reason why I got into data science, got into the master in statistics, was because I wanted to learn more, and like Claire, I learn better in a classroom setting, and that is very, very specific to myself. So for people who learn better online or at their own pace and have more self-discipline than myself, then I think those online resources could be very, very helpful, even without being in classrooms. And also, it's like in data science, like Jake mentioned earlier, it's continuous learning. You don't stop learning just because you already got the job. You have to continue learning. And I just happen to be the kind of person who learns better in classroom. And and my job is so, I think it's true to most data science job, that it's so flexible that nobody checks with you. It's like, are you in at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. or like, it's just like, it's very flexible, so you can take time during the day to go to school and then come back when your school is done. And I have really appreciated that. So yeah.
Great. And one of the big perks too of being employed and pursuing a master's is that a lot of businesses will help you pay for it. So that's another great perk. Jake, anything you wanted to add to that one?
Not in particular. I think it's oh geez, that was loud. Sorry about that. My someone's ringing the doorbell. Yeah, I don't think there's a yes answer. I have a lot of people who are different colleagues that are 5 to 10 years older than me who have no masters and are very successful in their own right. And I think it speaks to the just how broad a term data science is. You can find your particular niche without having a master's. But certain jobs, if you're a research scientist at Facebook, and you have a bachelor, that would be pretty amazing. So certain of them do require, I would imagine. But.
Yeah, actually, I do want to add to what Jake said. That is a really good point. It really depends on where do you want to work. Like, if you want to work at Google Brain or like doing like very, very sophisticated deep learning models, then you do need a graduate degree, at least in the market now, I haven't really seen anybody without a graduate degree who do those types of work. But if you're just somebody like myself who just wants to dig into the data, I have this like very, very ugly set of data that I just want to get some insights from it, and not necessarily using deep learning or like developing new algorithms and stuff like that, then I think I do believe that every one of us has an inner data scientist in ourselves. So if you put your mind into it, you can do it.
I love that. Okay, so we have our first viewer question, and it's a great question, and it relates to this conversation we're having about optimizing the time that you have in college. So this is a faculty member in data science, and one of the most difficult parts of their job is teaching how to translate data into actionable managerial insights. So it revolves around this communication piece. So do you guys have any recommendations on how to bring this into class to help students communicate their findings?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, I'll try to think of a few projects I've done, and where they've gotten stuck when it comes to explaining that number that we're predicting and where we kind of got over the gap. And it really relates to trying to take that number and put it back into context. So there was a project, I'll give you just a example, works well here. A project I worked on at a former employer where we were predicting the likelihood that a particular upgrade or change to a production IT system would cause an outage. And it was a binary classification model. You output a probability, and we took that all the way up to presenting to the CTO of the company. And when you get to that level, you really need to figure out, okay, yeah, he might speak in probabilities, but most likely you're going to have to say, okay, well, let's take a baseline model here, the model that was used previously, this risk adjustment model, and compare it to the one we just developed. So, we put it in terms of, okay, had you used this previous model, take the top 10% of riskiest changes from that model versus this one, you would have gathered, it's kind of like a sort of a lift or gain chart analysis. You would have gained, 3 times as many positive cases, right? You would have caught or at least had the opportunity to review those cases. So that, that really just thinking long and hard about, okay, as a non-technical business user, how would I best understand this number? And it's not really terribly well defined, but it really gets back to that. So.
Yeah, I think practice makes perfect. And I mean, it's like you'll never be perfect, but you get better every time after you practice. So one of the things that I learned in college and also from my internship was the ability to practice presentations in class or at my internship to managers or directors, or sometimes even the people higher up than that. So I think in terms of in classrooms, encourage students to do the presentation. So if we have like a final project, instead of just submitting the final project, a paper, we can make them say, hey, do a presentation, you practice. And so, we can tell we can tell students like, oh, this is how you do this is how you do that, this is how you do that. Like we can tell them 100 times, but then I think most people would learn by actually practicing it, and practicing it in an environment where there's no judgment. It's just, we're all there to learn. And the more they can do that, the better they get once they enter the workforce. And also, it's like, I have talked to people, actually, my mother-in-law retired last Friday. And then when we went over to her house during the time, just hanging out 6 feet apart, doing those social distancing. But one of the questions I asked, one of the things that she mentioned was, I will not miss doing, so she was a president at an NGO. And the one thing that she said at the end of her job was, I do not miss doing presentation or speak in front of people. And I'm like, you've been president for like 30 years or more, and you're still scared of talking to people in public. And so, it's like even people with that long career and experience, they're still nervous when they get up on stage or talk to different people and stuff like that. So if you're in college or early in your career and you feel nervous, that's completely normal. Over time you will learn, but try to get practice as much as possible. So, yeah.
I love that you brought up your mother-in-law. And one thing that I talk to my students a lot is that it has to pass the mom or the grandma test. If you can't explain it to your mom or your grandma, you need to go back to the drawing board. So Claire, it looks like you wanted to comment on that as well.
Yeah, I was just going to echo the whole practice makes quote unquote perfect. And I think a unique opportunity that students could get as far as practicing is that I think when we're in some of our more technical classes, or even as you go into the workforce, it's easy to kind of get that, have kind of your horse blinders on of like, here's the work that I'm doing. And you forget that there's people who don't have the base understanding of some of these technical things that you do, because you're surrounded by people who have that same base knowledge. And so for students to be able to not only practice presenting or communicating these things in class to each other, but also to maybe other students that aren't part of the same program, because that really makes you think about like something that's second nature to me really isn't second nature to someone else. And I think learning that early would be really beneficial for students, because I know there's a lot of people in the workforce that forget that often.
And I think one way to do that, to echo what I had mentioned before with the taking statistics and your different analytical methods and applying it to a different domain. I mean, there's a perfect way of you know, a lot of your English classmates probably hate statistics. So getting in front of them and explaining to them the why of how cool this analysis is or what it really tells you, you know, that's a good opportunity to sharpen those skills.
And I would just recommend a couple of practical things that you can implement in the classroom, kind of piggybacking off of Claire's idea. I actually, if I have a client project, I will have that client come in at midterm to give some initial feedback, which can potentially help the students reframe the problem and get a better feel for what those managers are looking for. And then to Claire's point, every once in a while, I'll have faculty from other disciplines come sit and give feedback before a final presentation. So again, kind of that idea of people without the technical knowledge. So while we're still talking about your college experiences, we did get a viewer question that came through as what was the course in college that led you to consider a career in data science?
So I think there was a lot of luck involved for me getting into data science. It kind of came to me instead of me chasing after it, which I know is not common, and I feel really lucky about that. But I even then, when I was in college, I was a very data-oriented person. I took a lot of advanced statistics courses, did just enough computer science to know how to program. And actually, when I was in college, data science wasn't a minor or major at most colleges. Like I didn't, throughout my whole career in college, I didn't know what data science was until senior year. And then we had a club called Train. So it's like try, ask, I for something, and then N for something. Yeah, but so, you know, I was part of that group, and what we did was every week we met for an hour, and before we met, we read a machine learning paper, and then we discussed the paper during those meetings. And for most people who have, for me, like without a master's degree, I'm not a theoretical math person. You know, I understand the application of it, but not the theory. And then when you read those machine learning papers, it's very intimidating. It's like most of the time I have no idea what they're talking about. It's like, what do this mean? Like, is it even English? And so I felt very intimidated by it. So I never really thought that, oh, I could go into that field. I could do modeling and stuff like that, you know. And so my first job out of college was actually economic consulting. But then it's like when the door opened and I was offered a job as a data scientist, I'm like, okay, you know, I could do that. And it has been the best decision ever to go into data science. But yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar story for me, almost serendipity, a connection through a family member to a local consultancy that did predictive analytics work back in 2012. I worked with them over a summer, and I went back and I changed my major from finance to the closest thing that I could keep all my credits for, but not be in the business school anymore, so economics. And then the class that really solidified, wow, how cool statistics really is it was the statistics 2 course. When you finally get past the comparison of means tests and t-distributions and everything, and you get into it's like an applied regression modeling course. That was pretty darn cool. And then I look back on the projects I did back then, I was like, whoa, we've come a long way. But nonetheless, that was really the first course that kind of evoked the magic, so to speak.
Yeah, I would also say that mine was a little bit by accident, getting into data science, or there wasn't anything that I was specifically doing with the idea that this would lead me to a career in data science. But actually, one opportunity that I had in school, and this wasn't a class, but over the summer after my sophomore year, I had an opportunity to work with a professor. He was a math professor, and he taught both math and statistics, and I got to help with his research, which was really nerdy, and I won't get into it, but a lot of what I did was generate data to do the research on, as well as kind of analyze and come to conclusions from that data, which at the time I didn't realize I was doing data science. But I knew that I enjoyed that. And as I went through my internship and learned more about opportunities, I realized that what I was doing with this research with this professor could actually be similar to something I could do as a career on a larger scale. So it wasn't a class, but it was an opportunity that I had through school.
Great. So believe it or not, we're already 5 minutes past the halfway mark. So a couple of lightning questions, just like 1 or 2 word answers that I'd like to ask to get in here really quickly. So what is the top hard skill you think people need to get into data science? So top skill, Claire, Kim, Jake, what do you got?
Python.
Programming, Python, either one is fine. And statistics, at least understand the basic statistics.
Being able to Google subquerying Stack Overflow.
Love it. Now, how about soft skills? What is the #1 soft skill you think people need to be successful in data science? Claire, Kim, Jake.
I would say remembering that others don't have the same technical knowledge as you do.
Ask question, frequent and early.
Yeah, Claire took mine. Putting yourself in the client's shoes.
Love that. And then we got a viewer question, maybe a couple of courses that you found most useful in your college career to get into data science.
For me, it's statistics, and then econometrics as well, which is effectively statistics. So.
Yeah, I think I was I set myself up pretty well, even though, it was never really a plan to get into data science by having 2 majors in economics and statistics, because I got to learn the methodologies in statistics classes. And then when I took a more advanced statistics courses, I got to do projects and, apply those things into questions that interested me. And then by doing economics, that was kind of my, I can't think of the word, but it's that's the application of statistics. And I remember my most favorite econ class was econometrics, and which was pretty much statistics in econ. And so kind of it set myself up pretty good. And actually the one thing that really helped me with my throughout my career was when I did an independent project. So at McAllister at the time, we didn't have time series class, but I really loved time series. And in my internship, I did a lot of time series modeling. So I decided to write a paper using ARIMA model, and actually having to learn the ARIMA model from scratch on my own. And it will, because we do a lot of that in data science, because nobody graduates from college or even a master's degree, PhD, knowing everything. So you have to learn, and the ability to start practicing early of learning on my own, and then ask my professors questions when I needed to. It really helped set me up for a successful career in data science.
Yeah, I'll just add, I am maybe a little bit of a fraud here. I've only taken 1 statistics class in all of undergrad, but I took a database systems class, or intro to databases, which I thought was really helpful, because I think a lot of a data scientist's job is working with data. That's another one that I'd recommend. I would also recommend more statistics. I just didn't know at the time.
I love that. And you are not a fraud. And that's a perfect segue into one of the viewer questions that we have. It is a faculty member who is trying to get recruiters to recruit their students, but a lot of recruiters are preferring traditional degrees like math or computer science. So how can faculty members or students sell their data science degrees? And I guess this kind of goes hand in hand with one of the questions that I always ask guest speakers is, what can students do to set themselves apart, especially tying into another viewer question, that you can't get a job without job experience, right? So two parts of the question there. One, how can data science students sell themselves over more traditional math or computer science degrees? And how can students get a job without technically having experience?
Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
The first 2 internships I had were unpaid internships at nonprofit organization. But the cool thing about that was one was a research internship in economics. So I got to do research with like people for real application. And then the other one was like using Python to do data mining and data analysis for them. And even though I wasn't getting paid and extra work on my end, those internships actually helped me land my first like paid internship. And so, I mean, if you're early in your career in college, then I would suggest like, if you can afford to, because I understand not everybody can afford to do an unpaid internship, but like if you can afford to, it's a good way to start. And even if you cannot land an unpaid internship that allows you to do those data analysis work, I would also suggest doing projects, go online, talk to people. The one thing that I really admire some of the students who from Macalester who have reached out to me in the past is that they reach out to me and ask for an informational interview. I never say no. I'm like, hey, I love talking to students. Like I want to help you help you be successful. And so it's like reaching out to your alumni from your school. Some people you find interesting on LinkedIn, like, the worst is they can say no. So like, and some there will be people who say yes, and those people, once they get to know you better, can advocate for you. And I'm mentioning this because in the past there have been so many people who have advocated for me to be able to get the job that I wasn't even 50% qualified for, and it was because there were people advocating for me to get those jobs. And yes, like, I mean, do one thing at a time and try different things and see where where your strength is. And if your strength is talking to people, do that. If your strength is working on your own and actually showing that, hey, even if I don't have real life experience, I can do projects here, look at my work product. And it's like find which one works best for you or both, and then try them out.
Go ahead, Claire.
Yeah, I would just kind of add to that too, thinking about the whole like, can't get a job without experience, can't get experience without a job. And this is something that I've told students who aren't necessarily looking for a data science career, but just kind of getting into the workforce in general. And I think that any experience is valuable, even if you're like, oh, but I haven't had like an internship at Google, how is anyone going to hire me? But I think that there's a lot of value in experiences that really have nothing to do with the field you're going into either. So I spent a summer in Spain as a nanny teaching kids English, which I was like, no one's going to care about this when I'm interviewing, but those soft skills that we've been talking about, I think it really spoke to that. And it also shows that, you're able to learn, you're able to adapt to new situations, which are just as important as those hard skills that you learn in school. So I guess it kind of goes to those data science degrees versus math or computer science. I think as much value as that has, I think other experiences, related or not, have a great amount of value too.
And I will say, from my personal experience in helping students with resumes, students have so much experience that they're not necessarily connecting the dots between it is experience that you should be putting on your resume. So if you're doing classroom projects, especially client projects, you can say that you were a student consultant for a business working on the problem that you worked on. As Kim mentioned, volunteer experience, internships. Another one, our MinneAnalytics fearless leader is writing to me in the chat, is participate in competitions like the Mini MUDOC Student Data Challenge. So anything that you do outside of just taking classes counts as experience, and you should remember to get all of that on your resume. All right, so let's transition into early career questions. So the first question I'd like you guys to think about and answer is related to a day in the life. So what does your typical project look like? And another thing that I'd love to come back to that Claire mentioned at the beginning of this session is this idea of teamwork and communication. So what does a project look like, not just in terms of the work, but also in terms of who you're working with and how you communicate your results?
Yeah, I can take that one. So I think it depends on the kind of the level of technicality of your role. I've had roles in the past where the projects have been super vetted out, and it's been very much decided that this is something we want to pursue, and it's kind of a rote one. You know, you just kind of get it done, and there's not a whole lot of interaction there. But the more challenging ones, perhaps more intriguing, are the you know, the ones where you get to work on a very new sort of projects and a new initiative. I have one at work now, which I'm working with the product owner, and it's a very new sort of project, and we spend a lot of time. I think one thing I would say is we spend a lot of time at the beginning, especially if the partner with whom we're working is not a data scientist and is, can somewhat speak the language, but definitely knows their product in and out. I will spend like an obscene amount of time talking to them, thinking of every question I can ask. No dumb questions. I'm serious. Like it is better to ask a dumb question at the beginning of the engagement as opposed to halfway through it when that customer or partner probably thought you already knew the answer. It's much better to get that out of the way, and it will inform the model building, all the data set gathering, and every assumption that goes into it. But yeah, so I would say that takes up a ton of time, really making sure you have exactly why. If I make a prediction, what are you going to do with that number? What system is this going to feed into? How are you going to make an action based off of that? And then following that, a ton of extra time goes into the pulling together, the aggregation of the right data, making sure you're not leaking anything in, making sure you're using data that's going to be available at the time of scoring, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a ton of time that goes into the kind of the scaffolding of the project, and in my experience, very little that goes into the actual, let's find the best algorithm for this data set.
A day in the life is hard to answer because for me the most attractive aspect of data science is that no days are the same. It's always different. But I would say that I spend most of my time programming because I'm still an individual contributor. So it's like I get to do the fun work, which is programming and actually trying to gain insight from the data. But I think it really depends on your team too. It's not just the role you are, because like right now, like my role is very different in my current role, in my current team than the previous team. And when I talk to other people who are economists, I, have to try to understand that, know their language and then speak in their language. And then when I talk to my data friends or my programming friends, I can talk in our language. And yeah, it's, I don't know. It's really that question is difficult, but yeah, it's you just do fun work, programming, and then presenting to people, and yeah, sometimes write an article.
I'll just add a little bit. So speaking to like who are the different people that I work with day to day. So we have data scientists. I don't work alone on many projects. We have many data scientists working together. And we also have analytic data engineers that we work really closely with to help with some of that data wrangling and cleaning and feature engineering and things like that. And then I spend a lot of my time with our business partners, not only kind of bringing them up to speed on what we've been working on or getting their input, requirements gathering and things like that. But we also spend a lot of time educating our business partners. The project that I work on is a larger enterprise project that, will be going on for a couple of years. And so our business partners not only need to understand what we're working on, but be able to explain it to others. So we spend a lot of time educating and making sure they have all of the resources and information they need to be able to speak to the project and our work across the organization.
Great, thank you. So we have a couple more viewer questions and we have about 10 minutes left. So we'll try to get as many in as we can. So we had 2 people ask about ethics in data. So what role does ethics play? So we have banking information, healthcare information, and consumer information that you guys are working with. So can you give us a 1 or 2 sentence kind of overview of what role ethics plays in what you do on a day-to-day basis?
A lot of my work is public facing currently, and so a lot of times, policies related to low income community, or there's like a racial race ethnicity aspect to it, so you always have to be careful what conclusions you're drawing. Are you so a lot of times, like if you do modeling, like if you put this variable in, are you making your model unintentionally or intentionally racist? And it's like, so all the things you have to be careful. It's like so it goes with the job, and a lot of times like talking with people who probably have better domain expertise than you can help in terms of like trying to understand the question without compromising the ethics part of your work.
Yeah. Go ahead, Claire.
Oh, I don't have much to add. I don't work with any data that's specific, like that is tied to specific consumers. But something that we do have to pay attention to is we have different data sources that we pay for, from like Nielsen or other sources like that, and making sure that we are following contracts with those of where we store that data, how we store that data, any external systems we use, making sure that we're keeping that integrity of our partners' data.
Yeah, and one point for me, working in healthcare, I think as often as possible, you think of bias, and it's often centered around race and other gender, other demographic characteristics like that. As often as I can, I try to, if you can get at an effective model without using one of those explicitly, I think you're often for the better. So instead of using race as a proxy for income, try using income directly, and accompanying other variables as you can. That's a very vague answer, I know, but it's not it's very much a problem that's under research, and it's not really I don't know many people have the exact answer to that as it relates to the work they're doing, but it's just being diligent, and then kind of monitoring your edge cases.
Great. Okay, let's do 2 quick lightning questions. The first question, just 1 or 2 classes. What classes do you wish your clients took in college? Let's go, Kim, Claire, Jake.
Very basic probability, because we talk probability and statistics a lot. It's like if they have that basic knowledge, conversation would go more smoothly.
I hope this isn't controversial for me to say, but any class that helps them get out of Excel and into a different tool.
Yeah, just for the sake of variety, probably an economics class, you get some statistics as a part of that, but I think everyone should take that. So outside of being my client or not.
All right, here's a quick yes/no question. Should colleges require business students to take a data literacy class? Yes or no?
Yes.
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 Love it. Okay, one question came in asking if there are any books, websites, or other resources that have really shaped your view about what's possible as it relates to data and data science.
I'll go. Twitter does it for me. I follow a lot of data scientists or data people on Twitter. They share their work, they share their thoughts, and a lot of times, it's just things that I wouldn't even think of, and it's Twitter.
I'd say trying to read from some of the greats like Tufte, and I'm looking at a book here into visualizing data, William Cleveland. Some of those, they're old books, they're old bad fonts from like the 70s, and they're not always the best to read, but if you can get through them, I think they're really powerful.
Kind of on the same Twitter note, using my LinkedIn network and paying attention to different articles that my network is posting, because I tend to trust a lot of the data scientists that I'm connected with there.
Great. All right, guys, 2 more questions to go. Because a lot of students are watching today's session, I just wanted to bring to light this idea of imposter syndrome. Over 70% of people feel it when they start a new profession or start a new job. So do you guys have any recommendations on how students can address this and really be confident in themselves and their talent?
Yeah, I can start. I feel imposter syndrome all the time, especially working on a team with data scientists who, have their master's degrees and have been doing it for a long time. And I kind of got there by accident. And one piece of advice that I was given early on, as I was feeling like, I don't know how to bring things up, I don't know how to ask the right questions, is someone told me to just make mistakes now and don't be afraid to make mistakes. You have so much grace early in your career to make mistakes that, a good example is public speaking. If you're scared of public speaking, just do it now. Maybe it'll be bad, but wouldn't you rather it be bad when you're 23 right out of college than when you're 45 and still bad at it? So it might have been, could have been worded better maybe, but that was advice that I got that really stuck with me of yeah, who cares if I make a mistake now? At least I can learn from it now, versus be too scared to do it and then never learn from it.
Yeah, I feel imposter syndrome all the time too. At a new job, been there for a year or more, still feel imposter syndrome. But for me, what helps is to stop comparing yourself to others. Everybody has their different path, and so far, everybody is probably going down different paths in the future. And so try to understand where you are. Don't compare yourself to others, and if compete with yourself and compete with your colleagues who might have a higher level of education, like Claire mentioned. That I think that has helped me in the past.
Yeah, I think for me, agreed totally with everything, but double checking your work and getting a sanity check with others on your team can really help to surface anything before you get to the higher level. You should be double checking anyway, but triple checking.
Great, I love it. So we have 3 minutes left. So I'd love each of you to spend up to a minute on any final thoughts you have as it relates to college careers or early career in data science.
To copy Ashley earlier in the hour, say yes. This is your chance to try everything. Think of failure as your learning opportunity. Fail quickly, learn faster, and try. Just try, and yeah.
Yeah, having no fear of failure, getting out there and trying new experiences, whether that's directly as it relates to your profession or doing stand-up comedy, getting on stage at the theater, anything like that, you will grow in ways that you probably think don't really relate to sitting at the terminal running shell scripts or whatever, but you'll be better off for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would echo everything that's been said. And I would also, along the lines of trying new things, just remember that there's no right path to get to where you want to go. Advice for students is that every experience is valuable and there's no step A, B, and C that will get you to D. There's, step A1, A2, like a million different ways that you can get to where you want to be. And so also have patience too. You don't need to get there tomorrow. Just keep working hard and value all the experiences that you get.
Could I add one more thing? Final thought. To be a data scientist, you don't have to have the data scientist title. I work with data. I'm known as the data scientist in the team, but I don't have the data scientist title anymore, and I'm very happy with my job. So if you see jobs out there, look at the description. Don't, the title will help you narrow down job postings, but pay attention to what they list, and if you could talk to people who are on the team or are hiring.
Excellent. So I can't believe our hour is already up. A big thank you to MinneAnalytics, as well as Claire, Kim, and Jake for being here today. If you have additional questions, reach out to MinneAnalytics, and we'd love to hook you guys up with some people who can answer those questions for you. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys back next Monday.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you all.
Thank you.